Welcome to Informative Channel, and today we will cover the topic, the rise of Islam in Venezuela, a growing faith in Latin America. Islam, a faith with over 1.9 billion adherents globally, has long been associated with the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Asia. However, in recent decades, it has increasingly found a foothold in places historically considered peripheral to the Islamic world. Among these is Venezuela, a Latin American nation better known for its Catholic heritage, tropical biodiversity, and tumultuous political landscape. Yet beneath this familiar surface lies a remarkable religious transformation, the rise of Islam, both among immigrants and native Venezuelans. This growing faith, quietly expanding in mosques, cultural centers, private homes, and digital spaces, is becoming a notable thread in Venezuela's diverse religious tapestry. The Islamic presence in Venezuela dates back to the early 20th century, primarily through migration. The first Muslims in Venezuela were largely Arab immigrants from Lebanon, Syria, and Palestine, fleeing the crumbling Ottoman Empire and later the upheavals of European colonialism and Zionist conflict in the Levant. These immigrants often arrived with limited resources but brought with them a strong cultural and religious identity. Settling in cities like Caracas, Maracaibo, Valencia, and Margarita Island, they established small businesses and integrated into local economies. Though largely focused on economic survival, many retained aspects of their faith, building informal prayer spaces and maintaining traditional customs. Still, in these early years, Islam was more a cultural heritage than a public religious force. Over time, many first-generation Muslims assimilated, marrying into Catholic families and becoming less visibly Islamic, while their children and grandchildren often identified more with the host culture than with Islam. This pattern began to shift by the late 20th century. The global resurgence of Islamic identity, spurred by events such as the Iranian Revolution, the Afghan Jihad, and the rise of pan-Islamist movements, reached even the shores of Venezuela. Additionally, international Islamic organizations began reaching out to Muslim minorities worldwide, including those in Latin America, to rekindle religious identity and offer resources such as Qurans, teachers, and support for mosque construction. In Venezuela, this led to the establishment of more formal Islamic institutions. One of the most prominent is the Islamic Center of Caracas, also known as the Mosque of Sheikh Ibrahim al-Ibrahim, completed in 1993 with the financial backing of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. This mosque, among the largest in Latin America, not only provides a space for worship but serves as a hub for community gatherings, Islamic education, and interfaith dialogue. It stands as a symbol of Islam's rootedness and aspirations in the Venezuelan context. While early Muslim communities in Venezuela were mostly immigrant-based, a striking new trend has emerged over the past 2 decades: conversions to Islam by native Venezuelans, particularly Afro-Venezuelans, intellectuals, and young people disillusioned with both Catholicism and the country's political turmoil. This phenomenon, though still modest in numbers, is deeply significant. It reflects a broader search for spiritual authenticity, ethical clarity, and a sense of global belonging in a time of national crisis. Many converts cite the clarity of Islamic teachings, the discipline of prayer and fasting, and the sense of brotherhood as key factors in their journey. Unlike in some parts of the world, where conversion to Islam is associated with radicalism or alienation, Venezuelan converts often frame their embrace of Islam as a return to personal dignity and social justice. Some are drawn to the anti-imperialist rhetoric associated with Islamic figures and nations, particularly in the context of Venezuela's antagonistic relationship with the United States. The rise of Islam in Venezuela must also be understood within the broader framework of political and economic collapse. Since the early 2000s, Venezuela has suffered from hyperinflation, widespread poverty, mass migration, and authoritarian governance. Under the presidencies of Hugo Chavez and Nicolás Maduro, the state positioned itself against U.S. hegemony and sought alliances with countries such as Iran, Syria, and Libya. This geopolitical realignment had both symbolic and material consequences. On the symbolic level, it opened a cultural and ideological space for Islam, particularly Shia Islam, to be seen as a legitimate and even heroic alternative to Western paradigms. On the material level, it led to increased Iranian and Lebanese Shia influence. including diplomatic exchanges, economic partnerships, and the establishment of cultural centers. While Sunni Islam remains dominant among the broader Muslim population, particularly those of Palestinian and Syrian origin, Shia Islam has grown more visible in urban centers and among some converts. One of the most intriguing aspects of the rise of Islam in Venezuela is its social inclusiveness. Despite stereotypes of Islam as patriarchal or conservative, many Venezuelan Muslims, both born and converted, report experiencing empowerment, particularly among women. In interviews and social media testimonies, Muslim women describe how wearing the hijab or adopting Islamic lifestyle practices gave them a new sense of agency, purpose, and identity in a society grappling with chaos and consumerism. Some have taken on leadership roles in mosques or cultural centers, while others run small businesses promoting halal products, Islamic books, or modest fashion. The Islamic emphasis on modesty, family, and community has appealed to those disenchanted by the hypersexualization and fragmentation of modern Venezuelan life. Islamic practices like Ramadan fasting or daily prayers provide a structure in a society where public institutions have often failed. In this way, Islam serves as a stabilizing force amid uncertainty. Digital technology has played a crucial role in spreading Islam across Venezuela. With access to smartphones and the internet, even in impoverished areas, more Venezuelans are discovering Islamic content online. YouTube videos, Facebook groups, TikTok influencers, and WhatsApp communities offer Islamic teachings in Spanish, catering directly to Latin American audiences. Organizations like the Latino Dawah Organization, LADO, and Islam in Spanish have made considerable efforts to translate Islamic materials and provide culturally resonant explanations of the faith. These resources are not only educational but communal, offering a virtual ummah for Venezuelans who may be isolated in their local environments. For many, their first contact with Islam is not through a mosque or a Muslim neighbor but through a video, a podcast, or an online testimony. This decentralization of religious transmission allows for a more grassroots, personal exploration of faith. Yet the growth of Islam in Venezuela is not without challenges. Muslims still represent a small minority, estimated at between 100,000 and 150,000 people in a country of over 28 million. This makes them vulnerable to marginalization, ignorance, or stereotyping. Islamophobia, while less institutionalized than in the West, occasionally surfaces in the form of media misrepresentation or public suspicion, especially when global events cast Islam in a negative light. Some converts face rejection from family members or struggle to reconcile their new faith with entrenched cultural norms. Moreover, the economic collapse of Venezuela has affected Muslim communities as much as others. Mosques and Islamic schools often struggle to maintain operations amid inflation and emigration. Many younger Muslims, including community leaders, have left for more stable environments in Colombia, the United States, or Europe, contributing to a brain drain in the Islamic landscape. Nevertheless, the resilience of the Muslim community in Venezuela is notable. Despite adversity, Muslims have managed to maintain Friday prayers, celebrate Eid, offer charity, and even conduct dawah efforts. Some communities have partnered with local churches or NGOs to deliver humanitarian aid, thus fostering interfaith cooperation and countering stereotypes. In urban neighborhoods, mosques often double as community kitchens or shelters. Islamic teachings on charity, zakat, and social responsibility resonate strongly in a context of hardship. Furthermore, Muslim entrepreneurs are creating halal food businesses, modest clothing lines, and Islamic art collectives, thereby embedding Islamic identity within the broader Venezuelan cultural scene. These micro-level initiatives reflect a grassroots Islam that is practical, adaptive, and deeply rooted in its social context. The educational dimension of Islam's rise in Venezuela is also evolving. There is an increasing demand for Islamic education among both children and adult converts. In response, several weekend schools and Quranic study circles have been established, often run by volunteers or funded by donations from international Islamic charities. Some Venezuelans have received scholarships to study Islam abroad, particularly in countries like Iran, Egypt, or Saudi Arabia. These individuals often return with more structured knowledge and a desire to build indigenous Islamic institutions. Still, language remains a barrier. While Arabic is revered, most Venezuelan Muslims are more fluent in Spanish, necessitating the localization of Islamic knowledge. This has led to a creative synthesis, where traditional teachings are interpreted through the lens of Latin American history, culture, and social reality. Some scholars have even begun exploring the intersection of Islamic liberation theology with Latin American revolutionary thought, creating unique intellectual hybrids. In political terms, the rise of Islam in Venezuela has both symbolic and strategic implications. The government's partnerships with Muslim-majority countries are often framed as anti-imperialist solidarity rather than religious affinity, but this association inevitably colors public perceptions. Iranian influence, in particular, has drawn scrutiny from US policymakers and regional analysts, who worry about the potential for ideological radicalization or clandestine networks. However, most Venezuelan Muslims are far removed from such geopolitical games. Their primary concerns are survival, identity, and community. Still, the growing visibility of Islam challenges the dominant narrative of Latin America as uniformly Catholic or secular. It introduces a pluralism that is both religious and cultural, reminding observers that even in times of crisis, faith can serve as a source of resilience and renewal. Looking ahead, the future of Islam in Venezuela remains uncertain but promising. The continued spread of Islamic teachings, the persistence of community institutions, and the ongoing flow of conversions suggest a durable presence. Much will depend on the country's broader trajectory, whether it stabilizes or continues to decline. If economic recovery and political reform take place, Muslim communities may be able to institutionalize further, perhaps establishing Islamic schools, publishing houses, or interfaith councils. If the crisis deepens, Islam may continue to serve as a sanctuary for those seeking spiritual and ethical grounding. In either case, the seeds of Islam have been planted, and they are growing in unexpected and powerful ways.